Hi and welcome back. We are live on the show floor of the San Jose Convention Center, the 2011 Embedded Systems Conference. I'm Brian Fuller, Editorial Director of EE Life for EE Times, and we are in the home stretch like a thoroughbred, like Seabiscuit. We are in the home stretch of our first day of live streaming. We're going to do this again tomorrow, as I've said before, for 4 hours. We're going to do it again Thursday. And we got a lineup at that point. We've done, I don't know, a dozen or so companies today. We got another 30 lined up for you in the next couple days, and then it'll all be archived for the long tail, as we say. So, second to last guest today, the penultimate guest, a man I've known for a long, long time and actually worked for about a year, Ron Collett, a legend in many people's minds. Ron, if you don't know his name, he's been a columnist for EE Times years ago. We're now looking at that camera, and he is now a blogger for us today with his R&D ROI blog, and he is the founder and CEO of the productivity software company Numetrics, located in Cupertino, California. Ron, welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Good to see you.
So it's all about productivity.
It is. I understand that there was a keynote this morning that talked about that, and so we're very excited to be at the show and be talking about improving productivity for embedded software developers and hardware designers.
So take us back a little bit to the beginnings of Numetrics and the problem that you saw. And I'm going to say you saw this problem because you were writing about it for me in the early 90s.
Right.
The design productivity gap and how engineering teams were or were not being productive.
Right, right. So basically the problem boils down to schedule slip. I mean, that's how the productivity problem manifests itself. And in a nutshell, the challenge that development teams face is meeting schedule on time, given the resources that are allocated to the project and the complexity of the design that they're doing. And this is independent of whether it's software or hardware. And so what we see consistently across the industry is missed schedules because of that misalignment between the complexity of the design, the resources, the number of resources that have been allocated, and the schedule constraint. And that's what our solution addresses. It enables the user to determine how many people to put on the project, given the complexity and given the schedule constraint.
So you've made a pretty nice business doing this on large-scale companies with very sort of critical delivery schedules, productivity needs. These guys are sort of at the bleeding edge of this science, and you've migrated it into other companies that aren't sort of the Intels of the world, that aren't so kind of bleeding edge. Talk about how you go about convincing companies in which that type of productivity may not be top of mind.
Yeah. So you're right. Our focus has been on the top semiconductor companies and the top electronics companies. Top meaning just in terms of size, complexity of design, and so on. But it's also equally applicable and is applied in production daily on analog and RF and mixed signal devices. We are just really now starting to move into the mainstream of the market, which are the smaller to mid-sized companies. But they have the same problem as everybody else, which is meeting schedule. And it's getting more and more difficult to meet schedule given the tremendous complexity of design and the tighter and tighter schedule constraints, which are a direct result of the intense global competition in the industry.
So let's talk a little bit about sort of your business and the cyclicality of the industry, because when you're at a trough, productivity is huge. When business is going crazy, productivity should be an issue, but it tends in the chaos among engineering teams and division leaders to get kind of lost in the chaos.
That's right. That's a very good point. You know, there's a famous expression which is, if it works, don't fix it. And strong profits mask underlying dysfunction, for lack of a better word, inside of an organization. So when a company is doing exceptionally well from a revenue standpoint, a profitability standpoint, oftentimes executive management is less focused on improving productivity and improving predictability than they are obviously on focusing on revenue and profits, and that's certainly understandable. But the problem remains, and it becomes a more and more serious problem, obviously, when revenue and profits aren't commensurate with what investor expectations are. So you're right. When times are difficult, that's when there's a lot of scrutiny on the problem, and when times are good, there's less scrutiny on the problem. So that is correct.
But that's when things can come and bite you on the
absolutely.
On the ass.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you're on television. I don't know if you could say that word. No, that's absolutely right. And what we see is that there's tremendous restructuring that goes on, and we've seen this over the last several years in the industry. And what's invariably uncovered is that the project teams are understaffed, and that is just a widespread problem across the industry. And to a great extent, that's an executive management issue. Yep. That executive management doesn't have the facts and data to make decisions, learned decisions on how many resources are really required to finish the project on time, given its enormous complexity. And who's left holding the bag, if you will, is the engineering team, the R&D team. Yeah. And so once the R&D team sees what we have, they say, wow, this could really help us to make our case to executive management that, hey, our productivity is good. We're not slackers, but there simply isn't enough resources. Enough resources have not been allocated to the project in order to finish it on time, given the enormous complexity of the project.
Right, right. So your next foray is into this space. You're actively working on that. You're doing some what's your phrase?
Customer discovery.
Discovery.
That's right. That. Customer discovery. So we have applied our solution predominantly to the IC hardware world, top semiconductor companies. Most of the top semiconductor companies in the industry, the larger ones, are using the system very effectively in production. It's been applied to on the order of 600-700 projects. That is the fact-based planning tools, which estimate resources and schedule and allow you to do what-if simulation. The models, by the way, are calibrated with an industry database of upwards of 1,500 or 1,600 production ICs. So they're empirically calibrated models. So it's, these are not theoretical or hypothetical models. We've also built a solution for the embedded software space, and we're starting to introduce that to them. It's been used in production, and we're at this show to understand what the broader market might look like in terms of applying that same technology, very similar technology, to the broad-based embedded software community. And so we're not here selling a product, we're here to listen to potential customers and others.
Good stuff. Well, Ron Collett, CEO and founder of Numetrics, thanks for stopping by. Are you going to be at Design Automation Conference?
I wouldn't miss it. It would be my, I think my 26th or 27th in a row.
So we're going to do this again there.
Is that right? Am I invited back?
Yes, you are invited back.
Well, we'll
see what the reviews are.
All right.
And before we go off onto our next and last interview of the day, Cliff Zitlaw from Spansion, it's back. I just thought, people come here and they tout their products, and that's all well and good, but we're going to tout one of our new products. EBN, used to be called Electronic Buyer's News. It was the first publication that the Leeds family started back in 1972. EE Times was the second. And we put EBN on ice a few years ago, and we brought it back last year online. It's a fantastic community studying the supply chain, run by Bellagio, and all sorts of other fantastic team members and bloggers. So check it out, ebnonline.com. And if you come by our booth, 1642, you'll get one of these things. I promise you. Anyway, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with our last guest of the day, Cliff Zitlaw from Spansion. Don't go away.